What is going on, YouTube? It's Keegan Dimitrovic, the Raving Wolf, the Reformation, and today we are going to do part one of what made WWE so good in the year 2005. Let's get to it. First things first, New Year's Revolution 2005. We start off the year '05 with a great pay per view, with a great Elimination Chamber match. You have a lot of stories going on. You have Shawn Michaels as a special guest referee. You have him feuding with Edge. You have Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho being the ring generals of this match. You have Chris Benoit doing a diving headbutt off the top of the pod. Everybody looked like a top contender, and there was a story going on between Randy Orton and Triple H as Evolution imploded earlier on in 2004. So you have Batista also deciding on which side he's going to be on, if he's going to turn on Triple H yet, or if he's going to side with him and help him regain the vacant World Heavyweight Championship. In the end, Triple H wins the World Heavyweight Championship again, and a reluctant Batista helps him win. And then this ultimately leads to the Royal Rumble 2005. And at the 2005 Royal Rumble, we have JBL defending the WWE Championship against Kurt Angle in the Big Show in a very underrated triple threat match. Triple H versus Randy Orton is better than you remember. The Undertaker wrestled Heidenreich in a casket match. And at the end, we have the 2005 Royal Rumble, which is regarded as one of the best Royal Rumble matches of all time. You have SmackDown versus Raw. You have 3-on-3. And then you have Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and Hardcore Holly on Daniel Puder just chopping him and chopping him and chopping him. And then you also have Rey Mysterio, Edge, John Cena, and Batista all as the final four. A new generation has arrived in the Ruthless Aggression era. And plus, who can forget the build to Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 21? Kurt Angle, who was not even supposed to be in the match, takes Nunzio's number, enters, wreaks havoc, and then is eventually sweet chin music out of the ring by Shawn Michaels. And this angers Kurt, and he takes out Shawn. And this leads to their dream match at WrestleMania 21 in April. Then, obviously, you have the final two. You have the botched ending, which actually made the match better. Vince McMahon comes out, tears both quads, as we all know, and then restarts the match, and Batista wins the 2005 Royal Rumble, which subsequently leads to Batista going for the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw. And at the 2005 Royal Rumble, we have JBL defending the WWE Championship against Kurt Angle in the Big Show in a very underrated triple threat match. Triple H versus Randy Orton is better than you remember. The Undertaker wrestled Heidenreich in a casket match. And at the end, we have the 2005 Royal Rumble, which is regarded as one of the best Royal Rumble matches of all time. You have SmackDown versus Raw. You have 3-on-3. And then you have Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and Hardcore Holly on Daniel Puder just chopping him and chopping him and chopping him. And then you also have Rey Mysterio, Edge, John Cena, and Batista all as the final four. A new generation has arrived in the Ruthless Aggression era. And plus, who can forget the build to Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 21? Kurt Angle, who was not even supposed to be in the match, takes Nunzio's number, enters, wreaks havoc, and then is eventually sweet chin music out of the ring by Shawn Michaels. And this angers Kurt, and he takes out Shawn. And this leads to their dream match at WrestleMania 21 in April. Then, obviously, you have the final two. You have the botched ending, which actually made the match better. Vince McMahon comes out, tears both quads, as we all know, and then restarts the match, and Batista wins the 2005 Royal Rumble, which subsequently leads to Batista going for the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw. Immediately after the Royal Rumble 2005, we have No Way Out in February. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero capture the WWE Tag Team Championships from the Basham Brothers, and then we have an excellent match between John Cena and Kurt Angle, with the winner facing JBL at WrestleMania 21 for the WWE Championship, where Cena would be victorious. And then last but not least, we have JBL versus The Big Show in a barbed wire steel cage match, which is, again, a better stipulation than most remember, and also had one of the most creatively satisfying finishes in WWE history. Big Show chokeslammed JBL from the top turnbuckle, and JBL went through the ring, and Big Show took his time on the steel steps, walking out thinking he had the WWE Championship won, only to find out that JBL from under the ring crawled through the apron and made his way out of the cage just before Big Show stepped down. So this finish led to JBL facing John Cena at WrestleMania 21, and this pay-per-view will go down as one of the most underrated in the Ruthless Aggression era, as a lot of good happened here. Plus, generally speaking, the build to WrestleMania 21 is one of the best there's ever been. You have Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero as the babyface tag team that are going one-on-one against each other for the first time ever as tag team champions. And then you have John Cena and JBL for the WWE Championship. You have The Undertaker and Randy Orton in an interpromotional match with Randy on Raw and Undertaker on SmackDown. You have Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels as the Dream Match, which is also interpromotional. You have Batista and Triple H, and you have the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match. And that match was probably the second best match on this show behind Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, which is my favorite match of all time, as many of you know. But also The Undertaker and Randy Orton had a clinic. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero did what they did, doing great lucha libre in a mix with an American style that made this match just excellent. And then you had John Cena defeating JBL for the WWE Championship and ending his 10-month run on top. And then you had Batista ending Triple H at WrestleMania and ending Evolution fully as we know it. And Batista is now crowned at the helm of Monday Night Raw. And WrestleMania 21, again, for those who know, is one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. It's probably in my top 3 in terms of enjoyment, and I go back to watch it at least once every single year because this show was so historical in so many ways. You still had relics from the Attitude Era that were still at the top of their game, like Undertaker and Triple H. You had Kurt Angle at the top of his game in general. You had Shawn Michaels at the top of his game, even though he was an Attitude Era relic. You had Eddie Guerrero doing some of the best work of his career. You had Rey Mysterio also doing great work. You had 6 men in the Money in the Bank ladder match that really know how to put a match together and make it great. And also, you crowned Edge as a new top guy in the company. And you crown John Cena as a top guy in the company, and you're also crowning Batista as a top guy in the company. So this Mania is probably maybe the most historical there's been in the last 20 years. Following WrestleMania 21, Raw presented Backlash, which saw Batista retain the World Heavyweight Championship against Triple H, and also saw a Match of the Year contender between Edge and Chris Benoit in a last man standing match, where Edge would hit Benoit with 3 spears. Benoit would be down. He would still be getting up. Benoit would hit a diving headbutt off the top of the ladder, but then Edge would also recover and move out of the way. But at the end, Edge took a brick out of his Money in the Bank briefcase and hit Benoit in the back of the head with it to keep the Rabid Wolverine down for a count of 10. And again, this was another creative finish and one of the most unique in WWE history because Edge literally had a brick in his briefcase and just smashed Chris in the back of the head with it, which made for a really, really fine finish. And also, it related to Edge as the Rated R Superstar and Ultimate Opportunist to have a finish like that. And then right after that, May 2nd edition of Raw in 2005, you had Shawn Michaels versus Shelton Benjamin in the Gold Rush Tournament, which is one of the best matches in Raw history. And it saw the great finish where Shelton springboarded into a Sweet Chin Music. And then from there, you would have Shawn Michaels also continuing his feud with Kurt Angle going into Vengeance. And Vengeance itself had an amazing triple threat match between my 2 favorite Canadians, Chris Jericho and Christian, against John Cena. Had another Match of the Year contender with Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle in an encore from their WrestleMania 21 match. And then finally, we had a Hell in a Cell match between Triple H and Batista, which ended their feud and signified Batista as the man in WWE. This match put Batista at a permanent main event level. This would be the 3rd consecutive pay-per-view he would beat Triple H. And then from there, Batista would move on to SmackDown in the draft lottery. And the draft lottery itself was also a huge part of 2005, as every week for about a month, one superstar would go from either Raw or SmackDown and just randomly show up. So John Cena would appear on Raw at the beginning, and then Chris Benoit would be the number one pick for SmackDown, and then the final pick was Batista, who would go on to feud with JBL at the Great American Bash. And in May, SmackDown would also present Judgment Day 2005, where Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero's feud would reach an apex, and Eddie would be newly turned heel. His psychology in this match was brilliant. I recommend you go back and watch this match. Rey Mysterio was tremendous as an underdog babyface, but Eddie's character ultimately stole the show because he just knows everything. He knows how to control a crowd. He knows pacing. He knows timing. And really study him in this match. It's so sad that Eddie passed away in 05 because he may have had the best year of his career this year. And that's also seen in the rematch that they would have on the June 21st, 2005 edition of SmackDown. Eddie Guerrero, character-wise here, absolutely at his best. And then in the main event, in his last pay-per-view as a SmackDown superstar, John Cena defended the WWE Championship against JBL in an I Quit match. And this was a bloodbath that would defy the PG era. This was almost like an Attitude Era match in a way. JBL was just beating on Cena and cutting promos during this match. And Cena would ultimately come out on top. JBL thought he would outsmart Cena by quitting before Cena could ram him through a pane of glass, but Cena did it anyway. It put an end to their feud. JBL would move on to Batista, and Cena would end up moving to Raw and eventually feuding with Chris Jericho. So that put an end to John on SmackDown. It was a great run, but now 2005 started this entirely new era for Raw and SmackDown. Last but not least, for part one, in June, WWE also presented ECW One Night Stand, where ECW stars from the past would come back. They would have a reunion show, and that would be that. But then ultimately we know what would happen later. There'd be a second One Night Stand, and then ECW TV would come back. However, this show was the best, and this was also ECW at its best post their prime. So you had Sabu coming in taking on Rhino, and you had Lionheart Chris Jericho against Lance Storm. You had a lot going on here, but you had that amazing clinic between Mike Awesome and Masato Tanaka, which is one of the best rivalries in ECW history. They had amazing matches all the time, like at November to Remember 99, for instance. So this match brought that back for one night only. And I'm honestly surprised Mike Awesome wasn't offered a contract after this match, or Masato Tanaka. I think Masato Tanaka was still doing stuff in Japan, though. Please correct me on that, especially for Mike Awesome. So you also had JBL cutting promos. You had Kurt Angle cutting promos. And then Eric Bischoff led the Crusaders down at the end of the Dudley Boys match with Tommy Dreamer and Sandman. And we ended in an ECW-style brawl for the show. And this was a great way for the Dudley Boys to go out until they eventually returned in 2015. Eric Bischoff got his comeuppance, which every ECW performer and every ECW fan wanted to see. And Paul Heyman stood on top. So ECW One Night Stand was totally against WWE, even though WWE produced it, which is a great paradox. But this show is one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. It's not just about match quality, but it's just about the emotional aspect of pro wrestling, which wrestling is about. So let me know what you guys think. What was your favorite pay-per-view for the first half of 2005? What did you think of the first half of 2005? Like, share, comment, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. I'll be back soon.